What if everything you have deemed as impossible really was possible? What have you known and believed was possible your whole life? You just didn't know how to actualize it. Come and discover a world of infinite possibilities on Outside the Impossible with Venus Castleberg. On this show, we will share pragmatic tools to create the life and living you truly desire. And now, your host, Venus Castleberg.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is so good to be back. I have a wonderful guest today, Sarah Grandinetti. Sarah Grandinetti knows something about parenting. She's an international speaker, Access Conscious certified facilitator, and mother of 4. She inspires audiences all over the world to choose more and actualize their dreams. Never desiring to limit herself, Sarah is also the owner of Salon Mix, a celebrity hair salon, and founder of Being You, Being With Them, a monthly membership group where parents and everyone else are inspired by tools, talks, and a tribe of like-minded people to create greater relationships with the young people in their lives. Whether presenting to an audience, teaching classes, or working one-on-one with the deep dive sessions, Sarah offers a rare combination of humor, warmth, and insight that invites people to feel empowered, release limitations, and truly be themselves. And I am so grateful that Sarah would join me on this grand adventure today. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, Venus. I'm so grateful and honored to be here with you.
I have to say, as a personal introduction to you, you are somebody who lights up a room.
Aww.
When you're
gonna make me cry at the front of this interview?
I know, I'm already crying too. Jesus.
You're supposed to save that for the last segment.
Well, let's get it out of the way, and then maybe I won't cry for the rest of the show. Woo. But I can honestly say, honey, you have changed my family's life.
Thank you.
The gratitude goes so deep, so thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your receiving and willingness to show up. That's really all it takes to change anything. It's just a willingness to show up and get vulnerable.
Yeah. So she's been doing this. We already finished it, but you guys can still take part in it. So she did this 7 days for $7, and it was a crazy, amazing parenting group where we talked about all of the ins and outs of parenting and ways that you guys could work together and live in greater harmony. And like I just said, in tears, that it changed my family's life. And so I was really excited to have Sarah on the show and to even talk about this subject a little bit farther, because I know so many people are like, how could parenting possibly be fun? It's just supposed to be a lot of work and painful, and if you're lucky, they're gone at 18. So,
True story.
Yes. So let's just even start to what's your story about parenting? Was parenting always easy for you?
Oh, interesting. That's a loaded question there, my friend. I met my husband, and he, 22, 23 years ago, and he had a little girl who was 9 months old. And we worked together, and he said, "Can you watch my daughter tonight?" And we were, just friends at the time. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I hadn't babysat in years." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I was 19 at the time. And so I kind of dove into this world with this young little being who was 9 months old. I was 19 years old. And that's what started my parenting journey. And we stayed together. We ended up having one more of our own, my son, who's 19, about to go off to college. And then we took a break and then had 2 more. So we have 2 sets. And then we have a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. And has parenting always been easy for me? I think on some level, yes, I've had an amount of ease, but I've always had the tools of access consciousness in my side pocket and as something that I got to access. So I think I have it easier than others, and definitely there's been some hard, as it always will, right? Tough times. But I don't know how I would have done it or created what I've created if it weren't for these tools.
So let's even start there. How did you discover access consciousness? I kind of know, but let's tell everybody else.
Okay. So my older brother is one of the co-creators of Access Consciousness. But back, so I was actually, when he started with Access, I was pregnant with my firstborn child. So that was in like 2000. And Dane called me up and said, "Hey, I found this thing called Access Bars. Will you come get your bars run?" And I did. And then I went off to create a life around, problems and not possibilities for a while. And then years later, I showed up to now become an Access facilitator and contribute to getting these tools out in the world.
Wonderful. And in access consciousness, there's actually a lot of different avenues. So like you can do business, you can do bodies, you can do, we have CPCK, conscious parents, conscious kids, but it's also like parenting. How did you choose to say, okay, I'd like to actually do some more with this parenting piece?
Oh, that is an awesome question, because when I first came to Access as a facilitator, I was like so used to being, I kind of had labeled myself as a mom, a wife, and a business owner. So I own a salon here in LA. And those three things were the things that I decided limited me from creating my reality. So when I became a facilitator, I was like, the last thing I'm talking about is relationships, business, and parenting. I'm going to do all the other things that are the branch out of who I really be. And I'm going to explode out on the scene. So I did that. I did that for a few years. And then more and more what happened, Venus, is my Access friends started to come visit, and they would be like, wow, your kids are so different. Do you even get how different your kids are? And of course, all of us parents are like, my kids are awesome. We're a little bit biased. So I'm like, yeah. But then it started to show up with like perfect strangers, with their friends' parents, with the kids, or the friends of my kids coming over and being like, do you get how different you are as a parent? And I was like, wow, maybe it's time. And the thing is that, the timing will always present itself on when you'll, have the biggest boom. And it's up to you to leap off that cliff when it shows you. And so going into quarantine, what topic came up very strongly for everybody, or for people with children, was like, how do I deal with the daily, interactions with this little person that I usually get to drop off somewhere else?
Right.
So that's
awesome. So, and I'd love for people, because I want to say this kind of up front, like this show is, whether you have kids or not, the show is for you because like you have parents. And what I think, Sarah, you might be able to speak to this a little, is like what experience have you had with the people that took your class that didn't have kids? What changed for them?
Wow, you're powering in with all the amazing questions. Okay, so we titled it "Being You, Being with Them" for a reason, because it's really if you have more of you, you get to invite people to have more of them. They get to see you thriving, you flying, and they're like, "Oh, me too. I get to have that too. Thank you for showing me." And we get to be that with our kids. And the people that showed up, some people showed up because of the title. Others showed up because they interact with children and were just invited by an energy in a kind of way. But what the feedback has been that, wow, there's been this like unparenting of people who don't have kids, but they get to go back and go, wow, okay, cool. If I don't have to blame my parents for how my life turned out, what can I choose now? If I can go into allowance of how my parents, having just done the best with what they had available, how does that free me to be more of me? And so this unparenting thing has kind of shown up dynamically. And then anytime you're looking at any ways to be more of you in whatever realm, your life gets greater.
And could sure use more people being them in the world right now, right?
Right, exactly.
So would you say, like, I know you said you started young and 19, and like, would you say that parenting was necessarily an easy thing for you?
Well, step parenting is a whole nother, animal. I think we should just have a whole call on that, my friend. Because coming in as a 19-year-old step parent, I didn't know what I didn't know. And sometimes that's a huge gift. I think a lot of people go out and prepare for becoming a parent and over prepare for what might happen that is never actually going to happen. So at 19, I didn't know what I didn't know about life. I didn't know what I didn't know about me. I didn't know what I didn't know about her. I just knew that I adored this being and I was going to show up for her. And that's really, I don't know if that answered your question, but it was easy, but because of, I don't know if I was even trying to get it right at that time. I didn't even know if that was a possibility.
True. So you mentioned already, and I'd love if you can go a little bit deeper into it, like that people have always said what you have is different. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what is different about your household?
There's a lot of choice in my household and a lot of conversation. So in the 7-day group, one of the things that I really tried to drive home with people was you have a choice every day to have a conversation over a consequence. And the times with our kids when we've been trained to believe that in order to get them to be disciplined, well-rounded children, we have to give them a consequence so they learn from their lessons or their mistakes. I'm sorry. And really what's available in that moment is you have somebody who has made a choice that created an outcome that they might not like. They are open to other possibilities, but if you shove a consequence down their throat, now they have to put up all their walls and barriers and they have to defend the consequence. And now you're more talking about the cell phone they got taken away or the grounding they are going to endure for 2 weeks or the this or the that, the taking away of something rather than the information you actually would rather have your kid have. And so in my home, we do a lot of conversations, but it's not talking at my kids, it's talking with them. It's asking them like, hey, what were you looking at creating with this choice? Did it create what you desired to create? What could you choose next time? What were you aware of when you chose that? And maybe they were aware of something so big and the adults in the situation that want them to be in trouble with you just weren't aware of it yet. And that's shown up a lot in my house. But it's treating my kids like infinite beings and not like little minions that I need to fabricate and mold into my perfect idea of a person to get out into the world.
Okay, so I know some people out there going, well, wait a minute, I have a kid and it's my responsibility to make sure that they're not failing in life, I guess, would be a way. So yeah. How would you speak to that?
So the failing in life, you want to look at your definitions of what failure is. Where you made those solid and real? What is really under it's my responsibility to make sure they're not failing? A lot of that is your fear. And then when you look at fear, a lot of times what's under that is the fear of being judged as a bad parent. It doesn't even have oftentimes when people get vulnerable, it has really nothing to do with the kids. It's like to make sure you did a good job and that you weren't the one failing somebody. And with that, is it your responsibility to go live their life for them? Or is it your responsibility to give them tools to live their own life and make their own choices? And so in my world, like failing's not even a fear, because when I started to look at that, like even with my son, I was kind of driving the bus for him. I tell this story a lot, but like I kind of handed him the imaginary keys to his own life when he was like 14. I said, you know what? I can't be out in front of you all the time. I'm exhausted. I got to go live my own life. And I'm here for you. I have your back. And I know I trust you. That's a huge one. I trust you to choose what you're going to choose. And I've got your back if you require anything. And from that place, I looked at the fear. What was I doing by going and trying to do all his homework for him or, do every project? The fear was he wasn't going to graduate high school. When I looked at that, I was like, is that really something for me to fear? Because there are plenty of people who don't graduate high school and still, like, he's not going to die if he doesn't walk down the aisle or I don't know if it's an aisle. What is it? I keep saying aisle because it sounds like a wedding, but whatever that is, it looks like an aisle to me. Right? But then I looked at that myself, and the funny thing is, Venus, I didn't graduate high school on time. I had stuff that came up in my, and I didn't even realize this till like recently looking at this with the parenting class. So I was like, that's even funnier, because I didn't graduate on time because of things that came up in my life. And I went back, got my diploma, and then chose something from that place. And had I graduated on time and done what the projection of what was right for me at that time, I would have gone off to college to go into debt to get a degree for something I had no intention of using. And how many people do that? So if our kids are creating things that are like actually throwing roadblocks in front of the life that you've decided, what are they aware of? What are they aware of when they're not getting up and going to school? And not to say like, throw all the rules out and just let your kid, be a bum and eat, drink soft drinks and eat, chips on the sofa every day. But putting a question into their world about what they see as their future, what they'd like to create, is a conversation starter you can have, rather than projecting that your fears on them.
And that's so much of where parenting comes from, is our fears and also what we learned growing up. I'd love to talk some more about the unparenting piece, but we're about to take a quick break. So we're going to take a break and come back and talk a little bit more about the unparenting. If you're out there and have any questions for Sarah or would like to talk about parenting with her, please call in at 202-570-7057, and we'll be right back.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
A social distancing tip.
While the CDC urges you to avoid close contact, like hugging or shaking hands, there are other non-physical ways to say hello. Wave, wink, use sign language, salute, smile, give the peace sign, throw up an air high five, do jazz hands. Remember, stay a minimum of 6 feet or 2 arms length away from others, and stay home if you can. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm here with Sarah Grandinetti, and we're talking about what if parenting could be fun.
Imagine that.
Right. So I'm really curious a little bit about this unparenting thing, because I can also see as myself being even a very late in the game parent, that like there are times when, and I've heard other people say this too in some of your classes, like there are times when I'm like, I hear my parents come out of my mouth. I'm like, and I'm like, I know that's my dad. Like, I'm like, and so it's like, how do you untrain that, like, learned behavior of like, okay, that's not even me.
Yeah, what I started to see is where people will reference point whatever relationship they had in that same paradigm. So a situation comes up, there's an energy, and this is what we do in Access Consciousness, is we identify these energies and then we ask them to change, right, with the clearing statement. So there's an energy that comes up, and maybe it was an energy that when you were familiar with that energy was when you were on the other side of it. So you were the kid. the energy comes up, and then it's like, what do I do right now? And then you have an autopilot that sets in with that reference point, and words come out that were said to you. And so what we're doing with this is like going back in time often, looking at that and going, okay, cool, where did I make this more real and true about me that has nothing to do with me? And not from a place of making mom or dad or grandma or whoever raised you wrong, but from going, okay, cool, if I were truly being me here, how would I like to show up in this situation? If I were truly being me here, what choices would be available? If I were truly being me here, how would I like to interact in this situation that actually wasn't gifted to me when I was a child? And the funny thing is that it shows up in parenting, but like we're also parenting our creations, we're parenting creation teams, we're parenting the same, like kind of if you have anybody working for you, like at an office or anything like that, you'll have these like energies come up. And while it might not be appropriate to tell a coworker to go to their room, what is your version of that? You know? And so when we look at this, it's like, wow, to kind of undo all of that and just peel back the layers of the conclusions you made about you and find, you know, the magical you that's actually truly you underneath all of it.
I love that. Yeah, I heard you talking to one woman about how neat her house needed to be. And you were like, is that yours or your parents? And I realized, oh my gosh, I so operate that way because of my parents and my grandparents. Right? So wonderful. So we have a Patricia here for questions. Welcome, Patricia.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Venus. Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, Patricia.
I'm just so excited to be able to hear you today and be here with you. I was one of the people that did take your class, even though I'm not currently parenting. And the reason why I took it was because really I was drawn to it partly by the title, just saying be you, being with them. And I'm currently living with my sister, and I thought, I need some help being with her. So I thought, that would work. So, and it just was really, really neat, even with what you were just talking about conversation, because I realized that we just really needed to sit down and have some conversations about the different ways that we see the world and stuff. And I guess my question is that sometimes I go to this place that it's like I don't want to make her feel like she's wrong or that the way that she chooses to be, that there's anything wrong with that, because there's not. But it's so different from the way that I am that sometimes I shut myself down to allow her to be who she is. I say, like, okay, well, I should let her say this and do this because this is the way she is. But then I'm not, I get uncomfortable because you go like, well, but I just really don't want to go there. I just don't really see the world that way. And so we've been able to actually work through some of it with the conversations and stuff. But I guess I was going to ask you if you wouldn't mind addressing that a little bit about, like how to let them be who they are and still be me.
Well, one of the things you can look at is like reaction and action. So if she's choosing to be something, if you lowered your walls and barriers to having to defend against it at all or go into any reaction, then your action step would then be, okay, cool, she's choosing that. I'm going to be an allowance of that. I don't have to actually choose like her juxtaposed position as my leaping off point of what I can choose. So let's just say you went out to get ice cream and she wanted chocolate ice cream and she thought chocolate ice cream was the only ice cream that anybody should ever eat, and you were like, I don't even eat chocolate, I don't understand. But instead of doing like a chocolate and vanilla swirl to make her happy and to make you happy, you can look at that and go, you know what, have all the chocolate ice cream. It's absolutely fine. I don't judge you. I receive you with all of your chocolate ice cream, but I'm going to choose strawberry, and not in reaction to you, but because I really like strawberry. And it can be that easy if you allow for it, if you're not doing it from a resistance or reaction to what she's choosing, and she feels received. And then she doesn't have to butt up against what you're choosing. And at the end of the day, with all of it, Patricia, those conversations that you've already started to have with a vulnerability element to it, looking at the 5 elements of intimacy, one of them is vulnerability. And when you're willing to really look at like, okay, cool, I don't have to be in reaction to you. I don't think you're wrong. I'm not trying to make you wrong here. How can we like co-create a relationship that works for both of us in having your back as well?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm also taking your 5 levels of intimacy class. So awesome.
Cool. I'm so glad you're
so we
on
just
that.
did. So you just did yesterday. You did allowance, and so which also just really helped, like you said, that being an allowance for our differences, and not making one better or worse than the other. Just they're just different. So
exactly. And if you don't have anything to prove about where you're coming from, an allowance is not doormat. So it doesn't mean that you're an allowance and you get bulldozed over.
Yeah.
It's hey, you get to choose whatever you'd like to choose. And what's funny is that people come off their point when a lot of the times if you go into total allowance and receiving of them, it just melts people with your vulnerability and your willingness to be like, hey, that's totally cool, and it just doesn't work for me, so I'm going to choose this, but not from making them wrong and not from any amount of attack or proving that you're right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's what in my past I have really gone to either doormat or align and agree or resist and react. It's just it's like in order for someone else to be who they were, I always thought that I had to make myself smaller.
You and everybody else, Patricia.
Okay.
You and everybody else.
I'm not alone.
No.
Oh, phew. Thank goodness. Thank you so much. Thank you. I just so appreciate you and Venus both. You guys are wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, my life.
Thank you for being here. Thanks, Patricia.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful. Thank
you.
Well, that's a great question. I'd love to go into that even just a little bit more. Would you be willing to talk about so let's say, and we, I've heard you talk on different places for this, but for today, you're living with somebody and you would really like the house to be neat or clean, or at least the dishes done. And, the teenager doesn't want to do the dishes and they're stacked all over the place. What is a way to be an allowance there? And and something maybe about the kingdom of we, can we all coexist and commune with each other?
Yeah, that is, I love the way you just put that, because it actually just showed me something that I've been trying to put to words. The foundational energy in your relationships and in your home is what's going to create the ease with these type of situations. So if you're having consistent conversations with your kids, if you're doing communion without force and control, if you're co-creating every day, then when it comes to these things about dishes or not dishes, it's a conversation, and they're there wanting to have your back the same way that you have theirs. But here's what I see happen is parents are like, okay, cool. How do I make my kids see that I'm right about having the dishes needing to be done? Okay. So, now I'll have a conversation with them. Now I'll sit down so that I can share with them how right I am about how the dishes need to be done. Now here's the thing. It doesn't mean you're wrong for wanting the dishes done. And it doesn't mean that they're right or wrong for the way that they're willing to live in a pigsty. It's just that building these conversations and making the choice to kind of rebuild the foundation of your home will allow things like that to show up. So kingdom of we, in my home, like yesterday, my son went to get his dog groomed and he said, asked me to pay for it. Okay. And I said, oh, okay, what's in it for me? Because I use that question all the time. What's in it for you? Or what's in it for them? Like if I ask my kid to do something. And then he's like, a clean dog and a happy son. I said, oh, and the downstairs swept. And he goes, okay, deal. And he ran out the door, went and picked up his dog, brought it back, and swept with no problem. But it's that type of easy ass, joy, fun, and play that we are with each other that we have created from these conversations over consequences. And so starting at that starting point of having the conversation with your kids and saying, hey, I'm really committing to creating a different relationship with you. What does that look like to you? And where can we come together so that I'm honoring you and you're honoring me, and we're trusting one another, and we're looking at the same like targets of a relationship. And so then when you ask for the dishes, you'll just naturally come at it from a different place, rather than that I'm right, I'm the parent, you should do it because I said so. Who likes that? No one likes that. No one likes that. And yet we expect our kids are going to jump to it and get it done. Like, no one freaking likes that. Like, because I said so, because I told you to. Like, you go to work, and I said yesterday on the call, you go to work, you do a job, and hopefully you love your job, but a lot of people don't. But you do it because you get paid. You get it, you do something because there's something in it for you. And why are we not being that way with our kids? And the in it for them might be gratitude. It might be a high five. It might be you acknowledging them and their being. And it might be that they get to co-create with you, and they get that doing the dishes has your back, and it creates the yummy energy that they really enjoy. It doesn't mean you have to bribe your kids for everything.
Right.
But if you're constantly barking orders at them or doing control, like, it doesn't matter. They're an infinite being. They know that that's not fun energy to play with. So they resist.
Right. And like we said, we called the episode "What if parenting could be fun?" So we're encouraging you to like look at these are some ways that maybe it could be more fun.
Absolutely.
So, and one of the things, and I'll just talk a little personally, one of the things I noticed for myself is I think after doing this 7 days with you, I just realized a lot of it was just irrelevant. Like things that I thought, were like a big deal just aren't. I mean, and things that would have triggered me even 2 weeks ago or a month ago, I was like, wow, is it really relevant? Is it really worth the discord and the fight that it creates? It's like, I only have my girl for another 3 months. I think I'm going to cry again.
That's not true. You have her forever. You just have her in the home for 3 months.
Right. Yes. And like, I love the energy that's possible now in enjoying each other and having more dialogue and conversations, and like not having it be that, when she does go to college in 3 months, that she, we're not liking each other anymore. You're like, well, that wasn't that, it's like what's really valuable here and what's really possible. And that's why I love what you're offering people right now, is like, there are so many tools and different possibilities, and you can use these tools in any relationship with anybody in your life. And how much greater could everything be if we weren't focusing on what we have made real and true or significant that isn't.
Yeah.
It's like, is it worth it?
No, that's a great extrapolation, because it's funny what you're creating here with just in this conversation, because I've been like, what else can I give people? And you're just kind of like pinging it in my world, and I'm so grateful. Because really what I started to look at for myself was anything I was making super relevant or significant about what I wanted my kid to choose or be or do. I went out into the future of like a possible future that I am trying to avoid, and I went there. So I leaned in and I said, okay, so I have a son who doesn't graduate high school, and he, let's say, then doesn't really get a real job. Maybe he's with me longer. Would that be so bad? Maybe not, because I really, really like him. But let's just say that he does. He jumps out of my home and he goes and lives in some apartment that, I know he could do better. And let's say it's always a mess because he never learned to clean up after himself, and he never learned how to cook or do laundry, which he's been doing his laundry himself since he was like 12 or 13. But let's just say, okay, and not even by my ask, by the way, this was just something he chose. And let's say the worst case scenario is that he doesn't have a college degree. He lives in a home that by his choosing is always a mess. And he doesn't make a lot of money. Okay. So these are like, parents' worst nightmares, maybe, other than, danger to them. But let's just say that that's the life he decides to create. But yet he and I have an amazing relationship, and he's happy. and he's happy, and I get to contribute to him. And I might not go over and sit on his messy couch or eat off of any of his plates because that's my choice. But I get to know my boy, and my boy never has to separate from me to have him. He never has to go off and make himself wrong or me wrong in order to choose something. That, from my interesting point of view, and this isn't going to be how everybody else chooses to parent, from my interesting point of view, at the end of the day, that's what I chose mattered to me. So all of these other things, or a lot of the fears, a lot of this reality, a lot of the projections of what makes me a good parent or not, or makes me a successful parent or not. And at the end of the day, if he's super cleanly and has a great job and went to college and is unhappy and we don't have a relationship, what was it for?
Great point. Yeah. Yep. That was beautifully said. And if we're not fighting against each other, what else is really truly possible? You know.
Yeah.
I just see that such a gift and so much opening there for everybody, you know, and I love how, yeah, I'm probably going to cry again. I'm just so grateful for the invitation that you be, and that you can show people a different possibility with everybody in their lives. So
yeah, absolutely.
We're going to take another short break here, and if you have questions for Sarah, please call in 202-570-7057, and we will talk some more on the other side about what if parenting could be fun.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
I'm Kathy Williams, host of Sexy Mom Abundant Life radio show on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. On the show, we explore living abundantly in every area of your life. Ways to let go of limiting patterns and beliefs and to step into the flow of creativity and possibility, knowing you are supported by the universe.
Is it time to create a different and greater world? Through research, we can explore paths to new and exciting possibilities. The Hope Foundation for Possibilities and Change is a research-based, not-for-profit organization dedicated to exploring, discovering, and creating a different future for all. Your donations make this happen. You can contribute at foundationforpossibilities.com.
Hello everyone, and welcome back. I'm here with Sarah Grandinetti, and we're talking about what if parenting could be fun. Welcome. So Sarah, I was thinking a little bit about, like, you've said it a couple times, you like, when something comes up, you choose conversation over consequence. So, well, I'm going to throw a hypothetical out there. What if your kid doesn't want a conversation?
So that also goes back to your allowance and what works for you in the moment. And when you aren't demanding anything or controlling anything, the conversations will show up, and they might not be on your timing, but again, being in that allowance. And there have been times when I've been like, hey, I really desire to have this conversation with you, and if that's not going to work for you this time, then I've actually invited my kids to create their consequence then. So if they don't desire to co-create the conversation, then they can co-create a consequence. And it's just being malleable. So I think I told the story on one of the calls, my son, I said to him, he's never really had a curfew. I never had to do that. There was always a trust with him that he makes good choices. And I said, hey, if you're ever going to be late, you need to call me. And if you're ever going to not show up for any reason, you better make it so good that it was worth whatever consequence is actually going to happen. And without going into too much of a story, he did this one night in his whole high school. It was actually after he graduated. He told me to be home at one point in time, and he didn't show up. Or he texted me he was on his way home, didn't show up. So I'm sitting there worried. And a few hours later, he shows up and does a whole speech to our Ring door camera and tells me what his consequence will be, and lets me know that he did remember me saying to him, make it so that it's worth it, and that he's willing to take the consequence because it was totally worth it to choose that at that point in time, what he chose. And after the speech and the vulnerability he was willing to be and the consequence he was willing to put forth on himself, I had nothing else to do. I didn't even have to parent him. He just said sorry, went to his room, and did it all himself. So, that's really what's possible when you start to look at having that communion, that creation, the co-creation with your kids. What's fair to them about a consequence if they don't actually want to have a conversation? I have a daughter, my 12-year-old, doesn't always like to talk. She definitely bottles stuff up. So I will give myself about a 2 or 3 minute time limit to talk to her. And the minute I perceive the energy of talking at her and she's completely shut me out, I will say, okay, I'm going to give you space. And then I'll check back in to see how you want to go forward with this. And I walk out, and it'll be, things will die down, and then she'll be ready. And she comes to me and says, okay, I'm ready to talk. And they're all different. All your kids are different. If you try to blanket everybody with the same type of systems and standards because you bought somewhere from some reality that fair is real, you will be butting up against each kid in some way at some point.
Well said. Everybody is different. Even the way that you parent is going to be different than the way somebody else parents. So, because you are different. Cool. So let's say you're triggered by something. Like there's something that triggers you. What tools do you use to get yourself into a different space?
With my kids?
Yeah.
Or just in general?
Well, it could be in general too.
Well, one of the things is, what's the value of holding on to this? Like, what is it that is, and then look at what future I'm creating by keeping the energy in my world. And then I am a Being Used certified facilitator, and I'm all about the Being Used tools. And one of my favorite questions, if I were truly being me here, what would I choose? And that question 99% of the time will snap me into a different possibility, even if it's just an inch away. But it'll show me I am fun, I am joy, I am chaotic, I am sometimes obnoxious, I am funny, I am these things. And so if I'm not being that, I'm not being me. So if I were truly being me here, what would I choose? If I were truly being me here, what would I be aware of as a possibility? And a lot of times it is like stopping myself mid-sentence and being like, wow. And that's that thing we talked about before. Like, I sound just like my dad because my dad did anger and control. And if I start to go down that road, I go, wow, okay, cool. If I were truly being me here, what would this look like? How would this end up? And right away, I'll like either crack a joke or make fun of myself or do something silly that kills like the tension in the room. And then the kids will be laughing at me or something. And then we move on, to the next phase of whatever's going on. And it doesn't have to continue down that road. A lot of times I see parents like make one choice for anger or control and then think they have to stick with it or they'll lose footing with their kids. And it's just not true.
Awesome. Hello, Joseph. Welcome.
Well, hello. How are you?
Hi, Joseph.
Hey there, young lady. Hey, I am loving what you're talking about, and it's so hilarious because I'm just like, oh, I got this great question, and then as soon as I jump on, you answer it. But I mean, it was awesome. We were totally tapped into each other because I have great kids. I mean, I do. I do. I got two awesome daughters, and my youngest, and and the great thing about being a dad is that I get to be dad of these two incredible children. But at the same time, I do find that there are times that I see myself as, my dad used anger and control when I was young as well. And, and it's so funny because when I would discipline Michaela, who's my oldest, I could bully her, and I did. I used raised voice, or I could give her a look and it would crush her. And Lily is just the opposite. I raise my voice at her or give her a look. She looks at me like, yeah, and she's always been that way. I mean, it's always been, she's never, in fact, it's never been like a defiant thing. It's always been a question like, why are you being that way? Is like, why, Dad? And so I was going to ask how do you not be your parents, or how do you not lose your, I tend to get angry if I'm not feeling heard, or if I'm feeling disrespected, or that I'm feeling cut off. If I'm trying to have a conversation, I guess, with Lily now, I definitely have way more tools than my dad ever had. But how do because I want to ask, how do I not feel disrespected? But I guess really the big question is that how do I communicate when I don't feel I'm being listened to, or I don't feel that there's really that connection? I feel like if I'm having a conversation, I feel like I'm talking at.
Yeah. So my first question is, like, what does respect mean to you? What's the value of respect to you?
That's a good question.
Thanks.
Not, I know. Yeah, it's good. It's not respect from the thing of like, I am your father, you must respect me. More of the desire to carry on a dialogue. And if I'm feeling that it'd be like in a conversation where I'm feeling that the other person is just wanting their point to be, they desire to be right. So I guess where I'm going is I'm trying to be right too.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a really cool awareness though, because so what would it look like if that was going on in your relationship and not your relationship with your daughter? But if you're having a conversation and it was another adult, and you felt like they weren't listening or they weren't hearing you, would it be the same reaction, and would you call it respect, or would you call it something else?
Just tell them they were being a dick, truthfully.
Okay. And are you able to okay.
I mean, it's going to be, sorry, little pattern interrupt there. Didn't mean to throw you off.
No, I love that. And sometimes, looking at your kid and being like, hey, you're being a dick, like that actually might break exactly how it did here, be the algorithm interrupt, that control and respect. Because a lot of times respect, and I see it in my own, my husband who, was raised as respect, the most valuable product in the Italian culture. It is the most valuable product. And respect in that culture oftentimes is you admit you're underneath me. Okay. And respect only goes upwards. And so if you're projecting that and you have a being as bright and shiny as Lily is, she's like, you don't get to put out my bright and shininess with your respect thing. And that's actually celebrated. But the thing is, what you're actually trying to invite is a communion and a conversation. And so if you started every conversation with, okay, cool, what can I be here that will create the greatest outcome? Ask her, hey, can we lower our walls and barriers because you guys have these tools? And what would be possible if we just were willing to listen and receive from one another so that we can both be heard? But you got to be willing to have her be heard as much as you desire to be heard. And the right and wrong stuff will work itself out if you get rid of this respect thing, meaning the projection of you will respect me and I will be heard. Because a lot of times parents want that and they only allow it to go one way. So I will get to a point where you hear me, and then when you want to be heard, I'm going to tell you all the reasons why you're wrong and cut you off a million times. and not actually hear what you were aware of. And a great thing that parents can start to introduce in their conversations with their kids is, what were you aware of when you chose that? Because you are acknowledging that they had an awareness, even in the things that they are getting, redirected for. They had some awareness, and then it reminds you that they had an awareness. So what are you aware of? What is it that you're aware of? If you continue that line of communication, then you're bringing two infinite beings to a table, and respect becomes more of like having each other's back rather than the way this reality does respect. And it becomes honoring rather than what this reality does respect. Because remember, the 5 elements of intimacy, respect is not one of them.
Right. That is true. I never even thought about that. Wow. Okay. Okie dokie. Well, okay, fine.
Yeah, you're doing great, Joseph. But also, if I could bring back to one thing,
sure.
What I would love, like all the parents listening, is really like, what is it underneath all of this that you're unwilling or have a fear of exposing to your child? So is it, hey, I'm scared sometimes, or hey, I'm worried that if I don't do this respect thing, that like you won't get this lesson. Hey, like whatever it is that's underneath, because what's underneath is those, a lot of times, like, when is the moment that you're having the most fun, the most joy? And I see parents all the time not be willing to expose that to their kids. It's like, okay, cool, we're on vacation now, I can be it. What if you could be it all the time? And that's what the whole topic today, what if parenting can be fun? You got to choose to be your fun, your play, your joy, and access it at any moment, even in the tough times.
Wow.
Yeah. And the thing is, you guys got an amazing being there. I don't know your older daughter, but Lily truly is such a shiny, bright star, unicorn gift, and she wouldn't have turned out that way if she didn't also have some bright, shining stars around her. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate the input, because Lord knows there are times I certainly feel a little out of my league.
Yeah, but remember we told Lily on one of the calls that, like, hey, we're winging it too. This is our first go.
Right.
Right?
That is true. That is true. This is the first time I've gone around with these tools, especially.
Yeah. And God, I would have given anything to have a dad be willing to ask a question like this. So your vulnerability is already so brilliant and different. And, like, and if we would all as parents look at it, go, wow, like I'm on my I have 4 kids, but I'm on my first go with all of them because they're all different. It's not going to look like how it turned out for the first one. So even though you have 2, it's your first go of 18 with Lily. And it's just, so be kind to you and have allowance for you too, not just her.
What? I get to have it too?
I know, it's crazy.
What the heck? How does it get better than that? That's awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you taking my call.
Absolutely.
You bet, Johnny. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. So we only have a few more minutes. I'm sure I have a couple more questions for you, but I'd love, before we run out of time, how can people find you, Sarah?
You can go to sarahgrandinetti.com, and that's Grandinetti, Sarah with an H. And we also have, Facebook is Sarah Grandinetti as well, and so is Instagram. It's real easy. Just learn how to spell my name, and you can find me.
So it's Grandinetti, just in case anybody is like, how do you spell it? Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And like we said, she did this amazing program, 7 days, couldn't believe it was only $7, changed everything for our family. And she's opened the doors for you folks out there. If you'd like to participate in that, you can actually go back, and then she's offering like some amazing deals for the people who go through that program. Would you like to say anything about that program or anything?
Just what we've branched off from there is if you go and join the 7 days, we're offering things in there, and then we just launched a Being You, Being With Them monthly group. That right now for maybe another month it's $12 a month. Unless you pay up front, then it's $10 a month. Oh my god. So it's $120 for the year or $12 a month in monthly installments, and we're going to do Facebook Lives and tools and interviews with other people creating. It could be around parenting or not, and then also a monthly Zoom call. And we're just going to start, creating a totally new future with parenting and making it super easy to choose. So that's available. That's also on my website.
That is such a gift. And I have to mention it because you did say you are a Being You certified facilitator, and I think you have a Being You class coming up in a week.
I do. It starts on June 5th, 2.5 day. My favorite tools in the world out of the Being You Changing the World book by Dr. Dane here. One of my favorite guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sarah. This has been such a gift. Thank you for everything you're contributing to the world.
Thank you, Venus. I'm so grateful for you. Huge hugs.
Yes, you too.
Bye.
Thank you, folks, for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.